This is Monday, 1/22/18, and we're talking about database and SQL. A little bit on course review and learning, data and information, servers, and a little bit of SQL. This is week 2. And it's only day 2 of the class because the previous week we didn't meet on Monday, so we only had one class period. Alright, first thing up here, finding solutions. In learning, it's so important to look for, so you have to be good at finding solutions, okay? And so education helps us do a better job of that. The 15-30 Dirk rule, what that means, if you're working hard, to find, something, a solution to something in class and whatever, SQL and so forth, if you put a good solid 15 to 30 minutes in on it, I'd say set it aside, go work on something else for a while, and then come back to it. Okay? Or drop me a note. You can text me, email me, or whatever. And then another thing in terms of learning, that's a big positive. If you think about while you're working, how does this apply to other situations, and how might I apply that to a place I previously worked or still work or whatever. So, to summarize, work hard to find solutions. If you can't find it, don't waste 4 hours on one topic when you could set it aside and get some help either from me or your classmates. And then always think about how you can apply the work that you're learning. Alright. Should be able to log in the Linux boxes, passwords, we reviewed that. This address attaches us to some of the actually to access to the network equipment here on campus. We talked about work server 1 and 2. And this is my text number. That's actually a Google number. It's with my Google account. So it's not my personal number, but it does forward to my personal address. Okay. Talk a little bit about objectives. It's really important. The idea is in learning, we have some outcome. You should be able to design, implement a database management system using MySQL and being able to access from a browser. That's the outcome. When we get all done with the class, you should be able to have a database that a user can access from a browser and do work on this database. And you'd be able to do specific work with the database, design, manage, and so forth. That's an outcome from the class. To get to that outcome, we have specific objectives. First thing that we worked on, this might seem simple, but you have to be able to log into the work servers. Can't do any work until you log into the work servers. One of our first objectives is to be able to log into the work servers, not only from PuTTY, but from a Mac, or you should be able to do it anywhere you can get access to a terminal. And if you say, I'm on a Chromebook and I don't have access to a terminal, that goes back to the other thing. You got to be able to find solutions. The solution there is, in Chrome, the browser Chrome, you can put an add-in on that is a terminal program. So you can run your terminal services right out of Chrome. And how would you have known that? You find the solution. And you're in technology. I mean, that's what this course is, where we're in the world of technology. And you want to be in the world of technology, or want to do more in the world of technology, so you should be able to find solutions. We have general things, we go to specific, and there's tasks and things you should know. Does that make sense?
This is Jody Dirksen.
You should be able to do a particular task and know certain information that deals with that. Alright. So, here's some of the things you should be able to do. You should be able to think about how you learn. And we'll be talking about that during the entire term. Think about how you learn. Okay? In Server 1, we should be able to access MySQL, user, password, and this would be your last name and first initial. And then the password is IST Spring 2018. And that'll allow you to get to the MySQL on the server. Alright. Next thing. Let's talk a little more specifically about data. Okay, the course talks about databases and how do we manage data using a database. So the first thing is data, we want to store it. And data looks like this, a bunch of ones and zeros. This is an example of ASCII code. That happens to be a capital A in ASCII. That's text or a string. The other thing we're going to be storing a lot of is numeric type data, or numbers. And we can store integers, floating point numbers, and so forth. The dates are stored as a number, but a specific type of number, so we will use date as a certain type of data. And then there's a whole array of different types of data. We don't do much in the database class with storing video, but obviously YouTube does. Audio, think of all the podcasts around the world and different ways we store audio, but we also store images, and we have these different formats of how we store images. So let's clarify that a little bit. So there are different ways that we'll store strings, how many places and so forth, how we store numbers, how we store dates, and lots of other items in the database. And we'll talk about that more as we go on. What type of data is that? To organize that then in a database, let's look at some items here. We can take data and we can take a bunch of characters, store them all together in a field or an attribute. For example, maybe somebody's name. Then we can take all the information about a particular person, and that would be a record. Bits make up the field, fields make up a record. We can put all the records in a table, which would be an entity, or sometimes referred to as a file, and we can group all those tables together in a database. Okay. A couple other things from the page here. We also talked about a little bit about networks connecting in to internet service provider. Here we have a router, and off the router we can have all these networks sitting here, a local area network. And from there, access the internet. Alright. So just a little bit of terminology here. We have, for example here, Mason City, Davenport, Google. We can connect to those. Talked a little bit about VPNs and we talked a little bit in general about the internet. Okay, and we talked about accessing, let's say if you're accessing Google, it's a web. One of the things we were emphasizing, the internet is different than the World Wide Web, and the World Wide Web uses the internet to function. The World Wide Web is this whole idea of hypertext transfer protocol. Hypertext transfer protocol secured. We have a URL that makes this up. We have hypertext, or we have HTML, in which we write the code, if you want to call it code. I call it markup language. Hypertext markup language. So we have browsers that interpret the HTML, and we have web servers that can hold pages of HTML. So we can bring that from a website to our house, let's say, and then communicate back to a website. One of the takeaways here the World Wide Web uses the internet as a means to communicate, and we're going to use the web as a means to communicate to databases stored and access them from the internet. Next thing we'll talk about, we did some SQL in class. So I had the students work server 1, they showed databases, they used school, they showed tables, they described student, they described the United States. For a little, you can see that, a little bit of that right here. So, as an example, I logged into MySQL, U for user. This was the, everybody can log into class 2018. Typically the students use their own login, last name, first initial. And then we typed in the password, in this case, capital I, T, spring 2018, exclamation point. And then we end up here at a prompt. And at that prompt, we can type our SQL statements. And they have that semicolon at the end. Alright, so you can type a statement, semicolon, press enter, and if you type the statement, if the syntax was right, it would give you the response. So I have a couple examples here. Actually I have one. We said use school, and then it gives us this information here about using school, and then I said describe student, which is a table in school, and then it described that. We have the field, we talked about those earlier, ID, first name, last name, birth, gender, and then we have the type. Variable characters, so these are strings. Here's a date, and this is like a string, but you can only put male or female in. Null, this can't be null because it's a primary key. These can be, and we force them to put in male or female. That can't be null either. Null, at this point in time, we'll talk more about later, as it's has no values in it. Nothing is stored in there. Alright. So, we will, students have the outline to be working in, right? Looking up information and giving the reference of where they found the information, so we can check, make sure it's legit. You have the Code Academy that you're working on, and that would help you get started in SQL. We're going to now start we're doing a little bit of practice every day in class with SQL. And then we have the information from class. And you do have whiteboard reviews that you can use. Let me know if you have questions. We got a good start. That's it.